So in this lecture, we're going to talk about the time period between World War I and World War II. This is commonly known as the interwar period. Now, to get started on this lecture, I want you to click on this link here with the economic conditions leading to Hitler's rise. It will take you to an article that you can read regarding the conditions that allowed for the party that Hitler founded, the Nazi Party, to be able to gain such political support that they were able to take over the Weimar Republic. That should take you about 8 minutes and answer the questions that are associated with that worksheet. Then once you're done with that, go ahead and move on to the Japanese expansion before World War II article to just give some context as to what was Japan doing after World War I, but still in the midst of their Industrial Revolution, which we know that's going to involve colonialization, imperialism, and then the targets that they're going to colonize and how that is going to lead into Japanese role in World War II, particularly in China. So go ahead and pause the video, click those articles, read them, answer the questions, and then come back to the video when you're done. So now that you've read both of those articles, go ahead and check your answers to the questions that were attached to those worksheets. So number one, the German government paid workers with hyperinflated currency. Okay, so hyperinflation is where the money is, its value is going to just drop rapidly. So there'll be people who are literally paying for a piece of bread with 1,000,000 Deutschmarks because that's how much it takes to buy just a loaf of bread. You've got children making blocks out of them, or people wallpapering their houses, or just burning the currency because it's worth more as tinder than it is as an actual currency. Now, that means that the wages the workers are earning are very, very low. So a kind of a throwback to what we saw with the working class with the Industrial Revolution. And on top of this, Germany also had to pay a ton of money for war debt and for war reparations, basically paying back the victors of World War I for what the Treaty of Versailles claimed was Germany's fault. So basically, everyone was devastated by World War I in terms of the war cost, but also the cost of human life. So they looked for someone to blame, and Germany got the blame, hence the Treaty of Versailles. And with this, that meant that Germany had to pay a lot of money back to the victors of the war. Okay. This is going to really undermine Germany's power economically, but also politically. And it's going to lead to a lot of social unrest because obviously people in Germany don't like that the Treaty of Versailles blamed Germany for this horrific war, but they're also not going to like that their money is plummeting down to being worthless, that they're basically going bankrupt because so much is owed in the Treaty of Versailles. Now, Hitler comes to power because he is going to scapegoat. He is going to give the people of Germany someone to blame for their problems. And scapegoating is when a group in power blames a group with very little power for their own problems. And as a historical continuity, we do see that the Jewish population is unfairly blamed for a lot of historical events, like with the spread of the bubonic plague being blamed on the Jewish population. So we see a redo of that, where Hitler blames the Jewish population, saying that they had somehow plotted to undermine the German war effort and that it was all part of this big conspiracy or scheme. And with this, the Germans feel a little bit better about, all of these issues in number one, that they feel like, oh, at least it's not our fault. We have someone to blame. Plus, you add that with the popularity of social Darwinism at the time, and that is only going to add fuel to the fire for straight up racism and nationalism in Germany, allowing for Germany to unify once again, but this time, instead of being under the Weimar Republic, it's going to be under the Nazi Party. Okay, so the purpose of the Treaty of Versailles was to prevent Germany from ever being able to wage war again. And it ironically did the opposite because the German population was so anti-Treaty of Versailles, because it was, very harsh. This is going to galvanize the movement in order to get Germany to rise once again, hence leading to World War II. Now looking at the next worksheet, talking about the expansion of Japan, looking at that document of a map with the arrows and everything, showing you where exactly they expanded and when. So answer number 1, they took over Korea and Taiwan. Korea was particularly important because this meant that Japan could launch attacks from the mainland of East Asia instead of having to use their navy and invade by sea. In 1914, they had controlled Korea and the island of Taiwan. Then after World War I, early 1930s, they took control of Manchuria. And then from 1933 to 1941, so leading into World War II, they expanded even further into East Asia, particularly in China. So we're going to see that when the Japanese are engaged in World War II, they are very much so going to be committing some atrocities against the Chinese as well as against Korea. Now I'm talking about natural resources. Okay, these are available means by which a country can develop economically and politically. So minerals, soil, fossil fuels like coal and gas, fresh water. Japan is an island, so they didn't have a ton of these natural resources. So if they're going to get these raw materials for their industrial growth, then that means that they need to expand, meaning they need to imperialize or empire build. And with this increased power, we're going to see an increased influence of Japan on the world stage, not just in East Asia. Okay, then what do the arrows indicate? It indicates where they started invading first and then where they expanded, but it also implies that there are some valuable natural resources available in the areas that they invaded, because what would the purpose of invasion be if not to provide raw materials for industrialization? So just a quick recap of some information that we had already gone over with some introduction of new information about World War I before we get into the interwar years. So in that vein, let's go ahead and review the main causes of World War I. Okay, now in the text box, you'll answer the question of what was the reasoning behind punishing Germany in the Treaty of Versailles. Why did the victors of World War I want to punish the Germans? Okay, what was the reason? Why were they making it so harsh? So y'all may remember from our worksheet of causes of World War I, we used the mnemonic device mania. So militarism, alliance, imperialism, nationalism, but then also we have that last A that counts as the spark for World War II, which is the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So looking at this review, militarism means that they're building up armies and navies, so an arms race. Alliance system, okay, we see a series of alliances where different countries ganged up together and signed treaties saying if so-and-so attacks you, then we'll back you up. Unfortunately, what this means is that when Serbia and Austria-Hungary get into it over the assassination of the Archduke, that's also going to draw in the British and the Russians, and all because of these alliances that they had previously made. It kind of just has a domino effect of bringing in the entire world. Imperialism, we've been seeing a lot in this time period. This is known as new imperialism. And remember that Africa and Asia were the targets for this new imperialism. The Europeans were colonizing in the old world rather than in the new world. Okay, and this drive for resources and drive for more territory directly leads to competition. And we've already seen that these countries have built up their arms. They've got shiny new weapons that are ready to use. Okay, and that is going to lead us into World War I. Also, we have the idea of nationalism. Okay, so excessive pride in your country. So if every country thinks, oh, we're the strongest and we'd be able to defeat so-and-so in a battle, right? They'll think, oh, this war will be over by Christmas. Well, spoiler alert, is going to drag on for years. But nationalism is actually going to be what sparks that assassination of Franz Ferdinand. Okay, the Serbian rebel groups wanted independence from Austria-Hungary, and they thought that killing the heir to the emperor would result in that independence. Okay, unfortunately, that spark, that assassination, led to the Great War, or the war to end all wars instead, which was only ended with the Treaty of Versailles. So we are going to look at the impact, okay, causation, historical thinking skill, the impact of the Treaty of Versailles on Germany. And obviously, this is going to be a very negative impact, right? Because we know it's going to lead to Germany instigating World War II. So looking at this first slide, and remember, all this will be given to you in the pair deck, but you may want to write down some of the additional information that I provide. So Germany was not invited to negotiations with the Treaty of Versailles. They're not going to be admitted into the League of Nations when it's first established. They do get to join in that big, group of European powers by 1926. But again, this is going to be about a decade after the end of the war. And as a result of the tensions, particularly between France and Germany, the Rhineland is going to be forced to be demilitarized, meaning that Germany could not have any military personnel or establishments in this area, because right next to this area is France. So France doesn't want Germany ever being able to invade them again. So they're basically putting this Rhineland as a buffer. And for it to be an effective buffer, you can't have any German military. Okay. And the issue also with this is that the French are going to claim the Saar. Okay, this is an area right here, which, to be fair, it is on the side of France, right by this buffer. The French are going to claim this area because it's rich in natural resources, particularly the raw material of coal, which is great for industrialization. Okay, so with this, Germany was going to lose their main supply of energy in the coal fields of the Saar, which would make them reliant on other countries for energy, meaning that they would have to buy or import coal from other countries. And remember, how much money does Germany have after World War I and the Treaty of Versailles? Well, not a lot, because they're paying reparations to the victors of World War I, like Britain and France. So this is going to be very, very rough for the Weimar Republic. Number one, they're politically, castrated. They're not allowed to join the League of Nations till much later. They didn't really get a say in the negotiations of the treaty in the first place. They also are being told that an area of their territory has to be demilitarized, meaning that they don't have that protection anymore because France is afraid of Germany invading. And they're economically destitute due to reparations and the reacquisition of the Saar by the French. Okay, now we know that when a country loses a war, typically the treaty is going to result in them losing territories to the winners. Now, the loss of territory is going to result in lost markets for German industrialization, and it's going to result in a loss of natural resources. So we see they lose about 13% of their holdings in territory. They're going to strip Germany of its colonies. And so they're no longer a part of that whole Berlin Conference scramble for Africa, right? Now all of their territories have been recolonized by other European colonies, and Germany is left without the markets for their manufactured goods, okay, a captive market, and they're left without a lot of natural resources like the coal that they would have gotten from the Saar. We're also going to see some other restrictions, like Germany being forbidden to unite with Austria. And the force that's going to enforce this rule is the League of Nations. Now, the League of Nations isn't going to be, that powerful, but still you see all of these measures to try and prevent Germany from becoming powerful again. Okay, they don't want another world war, hence why they're being so harsh on Germany after the Treaty of Versailles. So the entire point of this, of being forbidding them from uniting with Austria and from forbidding them from building up their army, okay, cutting down their army to only 100,000 men and forbidding conscription. So basically just completely emasculating their military. It was meant to keep Germany from waging war again. So the victors, like France, view Germany with suspicion. Okay, they want to make sure that Germany can never wage another world war. So they feel like they have to really lay down the law. The Germans, on the other hand, the other perspective, the Germans felt that it would leave them unable to defend themselves. So they're like, y'all are worried about us building up our military and invading y'all, but what's going to stop somebody from invading us if we only have 100,000 men? And our Navy and our Air Force have been demilitarized. So like we see that Germany can only keep 6 battleships and their submarines are taken away because submarine warfare was very effective in World War I. Okay, that did help Germany out a lot. And they're also going to cut down the number of people in their Navy. So you only have 6 battleships, you have no submarines, and your Navy is limited. They're also going to be banned from having an Air Force. Okay, so this is also going to further weaken Germany. Now, we're also going to see that with the Treaty of Versailles, the Weimar Republic, okay, who rules Germany at the time, had to accept blame. This is called the War Guilt Clause, Article 231. This is one of those articles that you're really, really, really going to need to know about. Like that article of 231, that is famous, right? So the War Guilt Clause is basically saying, hey, Germany, World War I was all your fault, and therefore we are going to hold you responsible for losses and damages, which means you're going to have to pay up, and you're going to have to pay up a lot, billions of dollars. This is going to be economically devastating for Germany, obviously leading to things like hyperinflation and social unrest. Now, the German people did not like this war guilt clause. They obviously didn't like having to pay the reparations. Like nobody likes having to owe money, but this whole war guilt clause really rubbed them the wrong way because they say from their perspective, hey, we had a treaty with Austria-Hungary before World War I. And so we had agreed to back up Austria-Hungary if they were attacked. Austria-Hungary started the war. They declared the war on Serbia after the Serbs killed their next emperor, their heir. So really, it was just Austria-Hungary versus Serbia at first, but Germany only joined because they had an alliance. They had a treaty with Austria-Hungary. So when Austria-Hungary squares up against Serbia, that means Germany is going to be the right-hand man for Austria-Hungary. Then we see like Russia siding with Serbia, hence leading to this domino effect of everybody getting involved. So Germany's like, why are you blaming us if really we were just backing up our buddy? We were just following our treaty. This war guilt clause should blame somebody else, but it's not going to be the case. They're going to focus on Germany. So at this point, okay, based on what we've covered regarding the Treaty of Versailles, I have some more resources for you to read. And there are some questions for you to answer. So go ahead and click on this link to read Germany's response to the treaty, which is going to include a peace delegation to the French leader Clemenceau, but it's also going to include Adolf Hitler's response to the Treaty of Versailles. And remember, he's going to rise to power because he is going to just talk smack about the treaty and how unfair it was. And people are going to support him for that at first because they're like, yeah, we think that treaty was unfair. And then that's when he starts coming in with the nationalism and social Darwinism and discrimination against the Jewish population. So go ahead and take about 15 minutes to read that response to the treaty from Germany and then answer the questions in the text box. Okay, welcome back. Now we're on to the next response. This is the response from the French leader, Minister Clemenceau. Okay, so he's read the objections that the peace delegation have made, saying, hey, this is going to completely wreck us economically, that it's going too far, that it's too harsh. And then this is going to be his reply to those issues brought forth by the peace delegation. And you're basically going to see that he's going to say, hey, actually, your objections don't really count. And really, we're just trying to stop another war from happening. So go ahead and click that link and then answer the questions that are associated with that resource. You're going to have about 15 minutes, okay, to read and answer those questions. And when you're done, come back to the video. So now, drawing upon the knowledge that you have from the time frame, from period 4, the 1900s and onwards, what problems do you see coming about because of the Versailles Treaty? Okay, what issues are going to culminate from this treaty that lead directly to World War II? So I'll give you a moment to think about that question and write your response, and then we'll go over it together. Okay, if you need more time, go ahead and pause the video and keep writing. But if otherwise you're ready to go over it, we'll go ahead and go through some potential answers. Number one, reparation payments will become a problem if the German economy turns bad. I mean, if they all owe all this money, but they don't have that money, okay, that means that nobody is going to get their reparation payments. And the Weimar Republic's response to this debt is going to be to print more money. But the more money they print, that is going to lead to inflation to the point that it becomes extreme and becomes hyperinflation. So this is going to be economically devastating for Germany. They're also not really accounting for, number two, German resentment towards the treaty. And their resentment towards the treaty is going to bleed over into resentment towards the British, resentment towards the French, since they are the ones who put the treaty together and enforced it, but also resentment against uninvolved parties like the Jewish population. Remember, the treaty is going to be used as a scapegoat for Germany's problems, for why they're having all of these issues. And then later, Hitler is going to come along and say, in addition to the treaty being the source of their problems, he's also going to try to link the Jewish population as a scapegoat for Germany's problems, thus leading to the rise of nationalism and the rise of the Nazi party in Germany. Okay, so obviously the end result, the long-term result of the Treaty of Versailles is that it leads to World War II. The Germans are going to be real resentful about this punishment. They're going to be economically hobbled, politically hobbled. And so when someone comes along running for political office saying, hey, I think that the Weimar Republic shouldn't have signed that treaty. I think the treaty is bad. I think we should get rid of the treaty and rise to power once again. Okay, people are going to respond to that message. So looking at the unresolved tensions after World War I, we're going to see that the major countries at the time that were imperializing, so like Britain and France and Japan, are going to keep control over their lands, which is going to lead to local resistance, like what we see with the division of the Ottoman Empire and then the former German colonies being taken up by other European colonizers. Okay, so we are going to see those resistance movements, that desire for independence, kind of like we saw the desire for the Serbs to be independent being the spark for World War I. And we're also going to see anti-imperialism. Okay, so people who want to resist imperialism because of the negative effects of imperialism or the worsening status quo. So we're going to see movements in the Middle East, like Pan-Arabism, trying to get independence for the Arabian Peninsula away from the British in particular. We're going to see Pan-Africanism, basically trying to resist the imperial powers that have taken over Africa, like France and West Africa and Britain and South Africa, and then of course Belgium and the Congo. There's a whole long list of problems that happened with that. And we're also going to see the rise of communism, just like we saw the rise of communism in response to the Industrial Revolution, where we're going to see communism rise in response to the imperial movement, okay, trying to help with that independence. And we see, of course, increased nationalism. We are going to see groups that, using Western education, using the access to education that has been provided due to this modern era where it's more accessible, they're going to establish groups that try to resist imperialism. Okay, like we see the Indian National Congress in India trying to fight back against the British Raj. We also see West African resistance to French rule. So eventually, after all these world wars, okay, we are going to see a decolonization movement, but it's going to take all the way until after these world wars and then moving into the Cold War that we finally see these countries that have been colonies for so long, like India, for instance, become independent of those colonial powers. Okay, so kind of just like a new series of revolutions leading to that independence. And with that, that is the end of our pair deck. Okay, so make sure that you filled out your chart and that you've read all of those resources and answered those questions. And then we will move on to the start of World War II in our next series.